Monday means it's Bill Krueger Day, the Bill Krueger podcast. He joins us every Monday here at pucksports.com. Brought to you by Rise Above Foundation. You can visit nativeyouthriseabove.org. And Bill was with us here every Monday to talk a little Mariners baseball. We are inside the Limbach Lumber Studios, the Puck Sports Studios, built by Limbach Lumber, family owned and serving the Northwest since 1930. Give them a call at 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbachlumber.com. Well, Bill Krueger, that was a nice weekend of baseball for your Los Marineros. The week didn't start off great with the series with the Tigers. And that's funny thing with baseball here when we look at it in a week's worth of time, because they finished off the week with just a fabulous series, highlighted by just a poster card day there at T-Mobile on Sunday Night Baseball. But nice series against the Mets. They dominated those guys.
Yeah, it was a drubbing, right? Particularly Game 3. But pitching just ruled the Mets. The Mets couldn't touch our pitching, and it's remarkable what the Mariners are able to line up on a regular basis, 1 through 5. Not just most teams, they can give you 3 great pitchers, maybe. But the other 2, it could be a dice shake. And there's always a little bit of juggle around bullpens and how much we use them and how we try to keep them perfect. And the Mariners just have this perfect storm of very superior pitching at the front end of the game and pitching that's consistent. It's not like our guys pitch great one day and then stink it up and then pitch great 3 days and then stink it up. These guys pitch good every game. I mean, there's been a handful of games where our starting pitchers have been knocked around across the whole season. So you pull that together, and boy, in the world of baseball, Jason, I can't even tell you, not just from the standpoint of what really helps you win games, but the psychology of the team is so powerful to walk to the park knowing that you have an excellent chance to win, and it really is a powerful thing. And they dominated the Mets. The Mets looked tired and obviously not swinging the bat very well. And then you exacerbate that with great pitching and a ballpark that kind of puts you in a negative mindset, which is fine. Make it. Paint the picture as bleak as you can. Come to Safeco. It's like hitting your driver against a 40-mile-an-hour wind. Come to Safeco. Come to T-Mobile. It's awful. It's cold, it's windy, it's awful. The ball doesn't go anywhere. You can't see there. Great. Fantastic. Let's just paint as bleak a picture as you want. The Mariners are used to playing here, and they know how to win here.
I thought in particular the weekend series, obviously against the Mets. I mean, we touch a little bit on what happened with the Tigers, but I just thought the weekend series and then the Sunday night baseball thing, the weather wasn't great here, in the beginning of the day, in the morning, and then early afternoon. And then all of a sudden first pitch comes around, Bill, at 4:00. And it's like the clouds, it opened up, the sun burned it all off. And you just had perfect weather on just a perfect afternoon. And if I'm ESPN, I'm saying to myself, why is it taking us this long to come back here? Obviously, you need the product to be good. Number one, right? You need a relevant baseball team. But I just thought that they, especially on Sunday, perhaps I'm reading too much into it, just sent, I think, a message maybe to the rest of baseball that, hey, man, if we get a little bit of offense, we are going to be a hard out if we get in the playoffs. We're going to be a big, big problem for you.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head because, yes, I mean, it isn't about depth of pitching when you get to the playoffs. I mean, these teams that have 1, 2, or 3 great pitchers, it does load the box for the 2 or 3 great pitchers. But the Mariners have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and the 4 or 5 can nestle themselves into somewhere in the middle of the game and be a powerful baton toss to get to cover in case our starters need it. I mean, they're just loaded because the Wu Miller combination in the bullpen could be really great come playoff time. Yeah, I think they're serving notice. Rodriguez returns. Crawford will be back. Some of the players have stepped in and played well in their stead. Certainly Victor Robles has done a great job. As the Rivas has done a great job at shortstop. The addition of a Rosarina and Turner gives you breadth in the lineup and depth and professional hitting and experience. So the Mariners have put themselves in a very good position. Now, look, The Astros have won. Well, the Mariners have won 4 in a row. The Astros have won 5 in a row. The Astros are pulling it together. The trio at the end of the game are pretty solid. Their pitching's getting healthier and they're swinging the bats. So it's going to be a battle to the end with those guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a great finish, right? These two teams are just going to go head to head, in terms of going up against each other here for the rest of the season. Gary Hill, who's on the radio side, had this 19 innings. 1 earned run that they're starters in this 3-game series. Miller got it started on Friday. Then it was Gilbert on Saturday, and then Castillo on Sunday. You're going to love this, right? Because you know the great go-to guy, Jim Moore. Jim Moore and I have a bet right now that if it all lines up perfectly, right? Not that they have to use one of these starters at the end, but if they can line up their rotation perfectly for the playoffs, I believe that the game 1 starter would be Logan Gilbert. He says it's Luis Castillo. Now, he says, to be fair to him, not exactly what he would do, but it's just he thinks that's what Scott Service would do. Let's say all things being equal, they're all in the same rest. I want to look way, way ahead, okay? Game 1 starter for the playoffs is...
Well, I mean, if you're going to play matchup, you have to kind of look at teams that have, if there's a preponderance of left-hand hitting in the team they're going to face, then I would steer away from Castillo. He's the weakest against left-hand hitting of the 3. If it's more of a right-hand hitting lineup, you almost want to say, gosh, it's a toss-up between Gilbert and Castillo. I'm with you. I think Gilbert's been the best pitcher all season when you take it front to end. He's been the most dominant pitcher front to end. I mean, you can argue George Kirby, but when you talk about dominance, and I think when you want to go into a first game scenario, you want your most dominating pitcher. Yeah. And I think that's Logan Gilbert. I think he's reached that point. I would agree with you. But there's no backseat with the other two. That's for sure.
No.
They both come very, very close to being equally deserving of a number 1 position. So that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, as you were answering it, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, you know what? It's a great problem that they have in terms of who they would go with in that game 1. Well, I want to go to Logan Gilbert for a second. What did he add this year? Did he add anything this year, or this was just the next step for him? But have you seen a difference from years past with Logan Gilbert to the version we are seeing this year?
I think he's just fine-tuned his breaking stuff a little bit more. At times his fastball command is improved, but he basically uses his fastball as a chase pitch. He doesn't throw it a lot for strikes, but he's realized that the best pitch he has is his slider. It's a weapon and it's a strike pitch. He can use it anytime in the count for a strike. That's his go get strikes pitch. And it's also can be a wipeout pitch. He's throwing his slurvy curveball, and it's working. He's tightened it up. It's not my flavor. It's not really a traditional curveball, but he gets swings and misses with it. The guy has such exceptional arm speed that all of his off-speed pitches, they don't necessarily have to be great. They're just they just come at you with all that late release down the mound, hard to pick up, and having 97, 98 to be able to manage. He only struggles with teams that are discerning, and it's hard to be discerning against him because he's got such overpowering stuff. He's had trouble when teams have tried to have kind of sat slider and took the fastball and kind of leaned on his slider, but that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. To me, he's supremely confident in the style of pitcher he is. He's a 21st century pitcher. The vertical strike zone is to his liking. He can pitch up and down, and his fastball lives at the top of the zone, and it's hard, and it comes at you even harder than the numbers suggest because he's late down the mound with his release point. He's a little bit goofy, and it's hard to pick his ball up. And he repeats, and he pitches with supreme confidence. He's got lots of different pitches that he can pitch at you with, and I think that creates. Most guys that throw the ball 30% of the time with their fastball, and this is going to change over time because of the strike zone and the way we teach our pitchers to pitch. Most of those guys are at the end. Most of those guys have to come at you with the kitchen sink because they can't throw hard. They're inventing pitches. They're pitching around their fastball. He pitches like an old guy, but with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. It's like Chris Bosio at the end, except Pete Vukovich, where you're waiting, to get the 3-2 and to throw him something off speed. He's doing it with 98. It's interesting. It's really interesting. I mean, when guys have great arms in my day, the calling card, you got a fastball, you're throwing 96 to 98. You're saying, show me you can hit it. And if you can't, I'll keep throwing it. And then I get to my breaking ball just maybe after we go for a while. That's how we pitched back in the day. But he's obviously developed a style that suits him well. As you remember, when he came to the big leagues, he was basically an American Legion breaking ball and a high fastball. That's who he was.
Yeah.
And he's evolved in such a short period of time to being a 5-pitch guy that can pitch any way you'd like him to. It's remarkable. It speaks highly to his aptitude for the game, his desire to get better, his focus and confidence, and then advantaging himself in the style of game that we're playing now, which is try to strike people out. The top of the zone is there for free picking, and he just fits in there really nicely.
Can you make sense how they, not just the pitching, but offensively, how can they look one way in a series against New York, but then look almost the opposite in that series against Detroit? Is the answer just, this is just sports, it's just baseball, this is what happens? But they looked two completely different teams in those series this past week.
I think we still set up better against left-handed pitching. So even with Skubal, we found a way to stay with him. Yeah. And he's the best left-hander in baseball, and we kind of stayed with him. We got him out of the game. We scored a couple runs on him. We're a right-hand hitting team. We lack left-hand hitting. And, of course, Crawford's out. That would help us. But we lack left-hand hitting team. So if Raleigh's in a little bit of a slide, we're a little light, right? So what did we see? We saw Skubal, and then we saw Quintana, and then we saw Manaea. And we kind of we outlasted Quintana. He didn't pitch that bad, but he had no help. He pitched pretty good for 5-6 innings. But right-hand pitching, you saw it. The kid that pitched the first game for Detroit that had never won.
Montero.
6 ERA. Yeah. Montero. Yeah. But he landed his curveball, and we couldn't hit him. And Wheeler on Sunday it's like we weren't even there. It was like we weren't even in the box. He was so good. And then, of course, Severino, he's just a dummy award. He's just a dummy. He pitches like a dummy. He's got great stuff, but he's a dummy. That's why he's just so. He's got elite stuff, but he's dumb.
Why is he dumb?
He doesn't know how to pitch. He doesn't know how to pitch. Plus he's got the breaking ball that's the Nintendo breaking ball. Ooh, look at that breaking ball. Ooh, look how far it goes across my video screen.
Yeah, but that's a pretty awesome breaking ball.
You, Jason, it's not. Because why? Because it stays on the plane of the bat. It looks pretty swift when it's outside the strike zone and you miss it by a foot. But when it stays in the strike zone, because it doesn't move off the bat, it's going east-west. As I've taught you anything, Jason, it's about making the breaking ball go down. That's the important part. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to go down.
Okay.
It has to have sharp breaking down. That's a breaking ball. That Nintendo breaking ball, he's got a good arm, but he's got a 10-cent head, and he's hurt all the time. And that's why he's not special. He could be special, but he's not. Down and into Polanco. What are you doing? He can't hit the ball away. What are you doing? First pitch to Canzone. Okay, well, do you know that he's dead red? He's dead red. That means he's all fastball, Canzone. And yes, he did hit the east-west breaking ball the next time up. I give him credit. Got a couple hits. That was a great day for Canzone. He's come back up.
Need it.
But I'm talking about from a pitcher's perspective. Severino just not the brightest bulb. Sorry.
There's no apologies. Don't worry about it.
Not the brightest bulb. And I know that he's not calling it, but he's executing around it. It's not good.
What do they do? I'm going to fast forward once again to the playoffs. What do they do? Because they probably just going to pitch 3 guys, right, in a series? Okay, so
I would think.
Yeah, so you use. How do you use Miller and Wu? How do you employ those guys in a series?
Well, you remember the Houston Astros when they went against the Dodgers, and the Dodgers were playing their platoon game, and the Dodgers couldn't, and Dave Roberts couldn't quit looking at his play sheet. Of course, I know that was still the aura of the cheating scandal.
Yeah.
Let's just put that to the side. But what they did over there, what they did was AJ Hinch, man, he was smart. He took Charlie Morton and he took Peacock and he put them in the middle. And he said, I've got guys, because these wars of attrition, of playoff game after playoff game after playoff game after playoff game, and we're playing them the same way, and it's the same guys again and again and again, and all of a sudden they get familiar. Those relief guys, they get familiar, and all of a sudden he could put Charlie Morton out there, and Charlie doesn't even get like interested until he's pitched a couple of innings because he's a starter and he's got elite stuff, and it gets better when you put in the bullpen. As I remind you, Jason, the best pitchers in the game are the starters.
They are.
They are. The guys at the end are not good enough to start. Yeah. That's why they're at the end.
Is that how it works?
Can I just keep re-emphasizing that with you?
Yes.
So the closer has its own little place. He kind of falls behind the number 3 starter. And if he's a good one, he might get a little bit more than that. But, your top 3 starters and even your 4 and 5 starter are better than your middle relievers. Mm-hmm. So if you could park Wu and Miller and their stuff plays up, and to have them go out, and if you have a little bit of a game where pitch count gets eaten up, you got to take your starter out, like he's got 4 2/3, but it's a close game, and you bring Wu and Miller in, and they pitch 3 innings. They can go and hand it to Jimmy Garcia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why Houston beat LA that one series, because they did that. Well, but Dave Robertson was looking down at his card. He never looked up. AJ Hinch looked at the game, realized there was a different way to play this thing, and he puts his starters in the middle of the game, his extra starters. And like I've told you, again, the best pitchers in the game are the starting pitchers. So if you can use them in the bullpen, you're better.
I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how they do it, how they deploy those guys, because
it'll be a weapon. It'll be a weapon.
I can only imagine
those 2 guys.
What'd you make of what you saw? Speaking of weapons, I'm curious how he would fit in here. What did you make of the Taylor kid, the 22-year-old that they brought up from AA Arkansas?
Talk about coming in and breathing fire. His heart rate was going 150, but moving fastball 96 to 98 and a hard slider. I mean, there's a lot to like there.
Yeah,
there's a lot to like. He's in a different category when you start looking at Voth and Snyder and Thornton, that group. He's a different category of stuff.
What do you mean?
He just has better stuff. He's got better stuff. He's got moving fastball and just hard slider. Those guys, they have the slurvy breaking ball. They don't throw as hard. Voth pitches around his fastball. He's a finesse guy. Snyder's got, he's just another leap up. Does he have the experience? No. And so you're going to have to keep putting him into some of these even and behind games. Let him try, show you that maybe he can earn a leverage spot. I mean, if he could, then that's going to be a real plus for the team. He's got the right attitude, man. He comes out there, he's not scared. He says, "Here I come. I got good stuff. I'm better than you," and that's a great place to begin. Not like, "Ooh, this guy is a special hitter. Ooh, what's his profile? Ooh, I've got to get the ball right off the corner or I'm going to get hit." He doesn't pitch like that. He's like, "Here I come," which is great.
Yeah, nice little weapon to have. Nice little weapon to add here.
At this point,
August.
You can't add from the market, so you got to go inside your system and decide if someone's kind of graduated on from. And he's moved up pretty quickly.
Yeah, real quick.
And relief pitchers can do that.
Yeah.
They can. You're not polishing them to get the 3rd pitch or the 4th pitch and command and experience that you need to have as a starter. They can just come up and breathe fire.
After the second home run on Sunday, how fast do you think maybe Scott Boras picked up the phone to call Jerry Dipoto about Cal Raleigh, or how does or is it just a text? The price tag keeps going up, Jerry.
Yeah, I don't know where that negotiation stands, if there's actually been any kind of discussions around a long-term contract. It would seem to me that if there hasn't, then someone's got to climb out from underneath a rock. I don't think Boras is a guy that's going to give away that leverage. He just isn't. He knows Cal is going to play. He knows that if he's a free agent, he's going to be worth a zillion. So he's not going to hand those arbitration years away for free. So the Mariners are going to have to come up with a package that obviously secures Raleigh for a long period of time and comes at Boras with something that's not, really cheap on the front end and waiting for the back end, because if that's the case, he just goes to arbitration and just keeps levering them up.
Yeah.
Right. So there is an answer for both parties. The money is so good that if you have an opportunity to take one bite at the apple to sign a 5 or 6 year deal, you're still going to be young enough to get another deal.
Right.
And that just salts away your life. Your life is secure. It's over. You're already talking about the next generation. Right. So it makes sense for Cal to consider it. And the other part of this is, are the Mariners a winning organization? Does Cal want to tie himself to this organization? Does he believe in them? They certainly should believe in him, because he's bringing every attribute you could ever hope for. He throws out more guys than anybody in the game. He's at the top of the league in fielding percentage. He's the best home run hitting catcher in the game. He switch hits. He plays hurt. He's a great leader. I mean, the boxes are all checked here.
Do you think you brought up something that I've thought a lot about with Raleigh? Do you think part of and we don't know whether they've had negotiations or talks, I'm sure they've talked about it, but do you think part of the reason maybe from Raleigh's point of view would be, I mean, I like it here, but and I'd like money, and you get 5-6 year deal, 85 million, 90 million. I mean, yeah, it's life-changing money, but I also want to win. And are you committed to winning? Because first and foremost, besides the money, the most important thing to me, and I'm speaking for him as if he were saying this, I want to win. And I need to make sure before I sign something here that locks me in here that this organization is committed to winning. You think that's part of maybe some thought process with him?
100%, 100%. And maybe he doesn't want to be bothered with this stuff during the season. Maybe he entertains it. Maybe before the season they had a few conversations. Wasn't anything that maybe between Scott and him that they thought was worthy at the moment, at the beginning of this year. I mean, he's still got to play another year before he's arbitration eligible. So if I've got my math right. So he's a long way from where the leverage starts. And baseball's, they don't want to hand anybody arbitration. Back in the day, they were all worried about free agency. And what they learned hard is that arbitration is the biggest lever, because they got to compare against classes, and those numbers jumped dramatically in the third year. That's why they fight tooth and nail on those, giving that guy the 3 full years. And then, of course, Union came back, and then they came up with this super tier thing that pays guys if you lead the league in everything, but it doesn't really give you the answer. I think he's well aware of his value. I think Cal's well aware. I think he also, we've heard him. He's the one that's been willing to, I think in a very polite way, say, are we trying to win? I expect us to try to win. And I know a lot of players think that, but not everybody's willing to say it. And I think when it comes from Cal, since he doesn't say a lot, it has a lot of credibility. And the organization knows that when he speaks, it's like E.F. Hutton. It's like John Wayne riding into town with the white hat on, man. There's just no way to tamper it down. They have to kind of swallow it and say, well, they don't know what to say when he's challenged them. And he's done it a couple of times. And I don't think in a crass way. He just said what I think everybody's thinking.
Do you think that would bother ownership, though?
Of course it does. They don't want anything that disrupts what their plan is. I mean, I think, I don't think it's necessarily when there's questions. I don't think management likes that at all. Of course they don't. They want players to kind of play and managements to manage, and we'll put the best product in the field we can. And Cal just wants to win. And you're right. You're 100% right. And it could happen here. I mean, hey, look, if we're going to look ahead, the interesting journey, right now they're in their own journey, right? The journey of this season. The players are labeled. Everybody's got their players. This is going to be the race to the finish line, and the Mariners have a good chance to go to the playoffs, and they have a good chance to go further. And particularly if they win the division, they won't be playing from behind the 8 ball like they were last time by being a wild card team. So this is all good. Now, when you start taking the jump to next season, then you start thinking about, well, who do we retain? Who do we need? And the problem that the Mariners face is they have a Baltimore Oriole-like young group, but that Baltimore Oriole-like young group is in Modesto. It's not coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, you can race the pitching, the Rogers, those guys up the line real quick, but those hitters, you need to let them take the steps. And there's still going to be a gap. That group is not going to be ready to step in and be the Baltimore Orioles of 2024 with every guy at every position ripping and doing all this good stuff and playing like big leaguers, right? That's the group that's not here yet. So yeah, that's going to be interesting, because by the time they get here, you're going to be left with other problems, right? How to sign everybody to a long-term contract?
Yeah.
How many pitchers can you re-sign to a long-term? All those circumstances evolve.
Right.
So if you're asking me the question, that's kind of what, but we're not there. We're kind of in the middle of trying to do it right now, and that's exciting.
How much fun has Robles been to watch? I mean, it's not what he's brought to the team. The hitting, the defense has gotten better. The energy and excitement and just juice, the absolute juice he brings to this team that has been missing for really for a long time. I mean, you got Sunday Night Baseball this past week where he's mic'd up and he's a star. He's talking about having pet monkeys. He's making a play in the outfield while he's talking to the guys. It's wow. I mean, you talk about a pickup during the season, which you didn't really think much of, and then it's turned out so far to just be an absolute gem for this team.
Well, I think he's a guy that had a lot of tools, that had a quick start on a very good team with the Nationals, and then fell on hard times and kind of lost himself, lost his confidence, lost his chance. And to come over here and have someone kind of give him a new game plan, and then to really go behind the scenes and say, this is my opportunity to get better. I'm going to keep my mouth shut, and I'm going to work hard. And when my number gets called, I'm going to deliver. And the Mariners, he was at a point of capitulation. Players don't make changes until they get to capitulation. They're going to play off of what got you there. You're not going to be very willing to open yourself up, particularly in the middle of the season or during a season, to make wholesale changes in your stance or your delivery or whatever it might be. And he was at that point. And they spread him out, and they got his hands in a better position, and he's not getting out on his front foot as bad. He's Gene Segura. That's what he looks like to me. He looks just like him. And he just sits on his legs and uses his hands. And it's been great. He just is a changed hitter. He can see, he's letting the baseball travel. He's seeing it. And all of a sudden, all the tools come popping out, right? And all of a sudden, the confidence and the swagger come out. The player that he's always should have become, that he didn't become, is now front and center. And it was all created because, really, honestly, Julio had to leave the lineup for him to have that chance, because he was a spot player. And he may not have been able to. He was starting to do it before Julio went down, but it was this real opportunity to go out there. And honestly, his outfield corner play was just sort of okay, not really okay. But his center field play has been terrific. And he goes and gets them. And he's got a good throwing arm. He plays, like you said, with panache. He's got a lot of swag. It creates confidence. It can be an intimidating factor for another team. You may not like it if you're an opponent. I would just say, just for him, just keep remembering what got you there. The fundamental things that were getting you back to where you were. Don't get bigger. Don't say, I've done a lot and I need to do more. I need to leave the ballpark more. Don't do that. Okay? Careful. Don't get too trapped up in your persona where you start to show up the other team. Because, he sat on home plate, he did a little bit of pimping, and somebody got hit.
Yeah, with a Rosarino, right.
So, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. Because you don't want to, I wouldn't be surprised that very quietly someone said, hey, man, see what happened to Randy? You can't have that, man. So, doesn't mean you can't be who you are. Just remember, just keep the pimp under control a little bit, okay? It's great. It's exciting. It's, like you said, energy. It's juice. It's all that. And he plays hard. And I don't think he means to show people up. He's just being who he is, right? But you have to be careful. In the Old West, when I played in the Old West, that wouldn't last at all. The Old West, he'd have wore one and somebody else would have wore one, because eye for eye. It's the Old West rules, right? But today we don't do that.
Well, let's look ahead. In a week from now, when we talk, they're going to head out on a 3-game road trip to Detroit, which will be a real interesting series. And I bring this up. Jim brought this up on one of the last shows, and I didn't think about it. And again, Detroit's not really in the mix right now. But I wonder how Detroit, and if you recall the last time they played in that final game here at home, Mitch Haniger made the comment, hey, we should beat them. We're a better team. And Jim asked a question like, how do you think that sits with Detroit? And I wonder. So I think there's a little interesting storyline that will develop here over the next 3 days when they start that series coming up on Tuesday. It runs through Thursdays. I don't know how Detroit treats it. If they remember it, AJ Hinch is he's a very good manager, and I wonder if he reminds Detroit of maybe what Mitch Haniger said. And then they head to Pittsburgh, which will be a fascinating storylines because they get Paul Skeens on Friday, which will be fantastic. Paul Skeens against Logan Gilbert. And then on Sunday, it's George Kirby against our old friend Marco Gonzalez. So it'll be kind of an interesting series.
Yeah, some really cool matchups coming up. And Skeens is taking the world by storm. It's like Kerry Woods or Mark the Bird, guys like that just came on the scenes and just dominated, right? But speaking of Detroit, you got to be careful what you say. When you look at Detroit, and they basically could have swept us. We came from out of nowhere.
They should have swept
that game. A box ball in right field. I mean, as we say, when balls like that go underneath the glove, we either say the bus is leaving in 45 minutes, or we say it's the big leagues. Come on, it's the big leagues, because it is the big leagues. That's not big league. That's not big league. That's not a big league play. And the Mariners advantaged it and won the ball game, which is terrific. But I think Detroit, when Scooble's on the mound, it's more than an even contest. They have a lineup of left-handed hitters. They got some guys that put the ball in play. They got some guys that can spray the ball around. They got some guys that can run. They got a young team. Okay, they're a little bit more consistent. They got a catcher that's got a cannon. They don't have anything in the bullpen. So if you chase the starter, you can pretty much wax them. But if you don't chase the starter, they're a bit of a problem. I really think you have to be careful how you look at performance. I don't think, and there's ebbs and flows. Like the Diamondbacks are playing pretty good right now, and I've heard a lot of good things about Milwaukee, and I saw them earlier, and I think they're pretty good. And the Dodgers, if they get their pitching right, they'll be really good. But I'll tell you, honestly, I think the American League is way better than the National League. I just do. I look at Philadelphia, and I look at New York, and I look at like Tampa and Boston, and I say I'm not so sure those two teams are better than Tampa and Boston. We play these teams. We have a harder time with some of these teams. I just don't think the Kansas Cities, the Bostons, the Tampas. I think these teams are better than most of the teams in the National League. I don't think the National League is very good. So, it's great. Hey, we waffled the Mets. Great. They're in the playoff hunt. Okay. Philadelphia, we kind of took care of them too. I just wasn't very impressed.
Fair.
So you have to kind of keep that in your head when you start thinking about how the team is playing. You take what's in front of you and you beat them. And if they score a little bit, they're going to win a lot. That's for sure. Houston,
of course, is like a percentage point ahead of Seattle right now. It's got a 3-game series with Tampa this week, and also the White Sox. And then we'll talk next week. They'll be starting a series there with Boston. Again, this thing going down to the wire. They will next meet Houston and Seattle not until September 23rd. They're in Houston, which is remarkable, but.
Big theater. I have a feeling.
Amazing. You know what's big theater? Your big theater, Bill Krueger. Every Monday, Bill Krueger joins us here. It's all brought to you by the Rise Above Foundation. Visit nativeyouthriseabove.org. Bill Krueger every Monday, 1 o'clock, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and of course here on pucksports.com. All right, Mr. Krueger, we'll talk to you next Monday. As always, I appreciate it.
Love it, Jason.
You got it. All right. Again, all the platforms we release every Monday with Bill at 1 o'clock. I'll mention it one more time: YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Please leave a comment. Please follow, pass along to friends. And again, the best place, one-stop shop to find all the content up at pucksports.com.